Hello friends, for today's video I thought it would be fun to do a manga and video game vlog. So I've recently been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so I thought it'd be fun to sort of bring you along through some of that. And then also I recently got the newest volume of Spy Family, so I'm really excited to jump back into that. I love Spy Family, it's one of my favorite manga and animes, and I just never get tired of talking about Spy Family. I never get tired of reading Spy Family, and I'm really excited for this next volume. If I can, I'm going to try to also pick up more Tokyo Ghoul. I think I mentioned in another video that rather than go back and forth between Tokyo Ghoul and Ancient Magus' Bride, which is what I was doing previously, that I wanted to just go ahead and get through all of Tokyo Ghoul and then pick Ancient Magus' Bride back up. And so that's what I'm planning to do, and I think I might try to squeeze in some Tokyo Ghoul this week as well. And I had a lot of fun the last time I did a video kind of like this for the video game portion. If you don't care about that, I'll have a timestamp so you can skip over that. I did this for some Elden Ring, another playthrough of Elden Ring, and I'll have that vlog linked if you're interested. But I'm going to do a voiceover and just kind of chat through some of the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth thoughts as we've been going through that. And I'll let you know in the description bar what we're going to be going through in case you've only gotten to a certain point. Then that way, if you want to watch some of that, but then you also don't want to be spoiled, you can just watch some and then skip. Because I'm very sensitive to your... I never want to spoil people, and I feel like other people, with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in particular, don't care about spoiling people at all. So I want to be really mindful of that. So if you need to check the description bar, feel free to do so. And then we'll jump into some final thoughts on the manga at the end. Everything in this manga is hilarious, but this particular frame of this agent who's in love with Lloyd saying, "Today Twilight spoke to me for 5 minutes and 41 seconds. was super funny to me. At the time of recording this, I have not quite beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm really close though. I'm just trying to wrap the game up. And the clips here aren't really going to show anything spoilery. It's mostly just random things that I pieced together. A lot of chocobo footage because I love the chocobos. And so I'm just going to keep in line with that and the randomness of these clips, and I will also just be giving random thoughts about the game. So first off, the navigation in general, that's actually a strangely important thing to me in games, is how easy it is to get from one place to the next. And if it is more of a challenge, is that challenge fun or is it tedious? Is it actually fun to get from point A to point B? Is there a nice landscape to look at? I often like to use the example of Ghost of Tsushima as one where you don't even want to fast travel, even when fast travel is an option, because it's so beautiful. You just want to look at everything. And then there are other games where I've mentioned before, I will get to a really high spot if it's a game where you can essentially fly or jump off of things and glide, where it's fun to just climb up really high and then jump off of things because of the feeling of it and that sense of exploration. So I have found that FF7 Rebirth has done a great job of that. What I have not liked about this game is these stupid Moogles. I hated them so much. I can't remember the last time in a game that I found something that I hated more. I mean, Elden Ring and those sorts of games make you want to rage quit sometimes, or you get angry and you want to throw your controller at the screen, but then you're like, okay, well, let me give it another try. Whereas these things, I just hated them. I hate them so much. They're hideous. They're annoying. They really, honestly, I feel like give us this sense of this is what it's like when there are adults with small children that they don't pay attention to. And if you've ever gone to the grocery store or anywhere and somebody's kid's just running around causing things to fall and making a mess, and then they look to you like you're supposed to be cool with it, that is what it feels like, because they're like, oh, done already whenever you mess up, and you're like, no, I want to be done. Anyway, I won't yell. I hate the Moogles. I hate them so much, and it brings the game down a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I'm being hyperbolic, but I can't stand them. I hate them so much. However, just thoughts in general about the mini games. I don't know if this is the unpopular opinion or not, but I know it's a little controversial. I love Queen's Blood. I like deck building games in general, so if you are also a deck building game fan, have you enjoyed Queen's Blood? And if you haven't, would you say you think it's because you don't tend to like those games, or you just in general find this particular minigame tedious? I do think they went overboard in general with the mini games, and I'm actually thinking about doing a video dedicated to all the mini games in Final Fantasy VII and talking about them or tier ranking them or something, because there's just so many of them. The crunch, the sit-ups challenge, even though it was annoying, I actually did kind of enjoy that one. Anyway, getting back to more important things besides just the exploration and then also mini games. The game is gorgeous. It is so weird. I did play the original and I have a lot of nostalgia, and the combat system I actually think is pretty reminiscent of the original while bringing new elements of gaming into the picture, which I really, really like. The characters are all very true to themselves. There's been 2 plot lines that I've gotten kind of emotional over, and I'd say it has to be the ones that do with Barrett and the one that has to do with Red 13. I won't say too much more though. Those have been my favorite parts of the game. What have your favorite parts been? And least favorite parts? Before jumping back into the manga, some of you might think that this is stupid and ridiculous, but I purchased a physical copy of the Game Informer magazine that has Sephiroth on the front and Cloud on the back. And this has sort of weirdly sentimental, nostalgic value to me because as a kid, I got Game Informer and I had the subscription. I remember as a kid, first off, getting mail as a kid was the best feeling. And maybe it's because you're like, something for me. I don't know, but I don't know what it was. I loved getting mail as a kid. Did you love mail as a kid also? But anyway, so I used to get Game Informer once a month. It was such a highlight. I loved it. I remember sitting on the floor in my room, flipping through, seeing what games sounded interesting to me. If they were talking about Final Fantasy X, I was always excited. But regardless, because I used to get this magazine every month as a kid, I was very curious to see if they were going to have an edition for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and when they did, I was like, I feel like I gotta get a copy. It was only a few bucks, so it wasn't expensive or anything, and I know that sounds goofy, but it just is sort of like a full circle moment. I don't know how to explain it, but it was, I have it sitting oftentimes in my office because I have what's technically a cookbook stand that I put my notes on and stuff when I'm filming, and often you'll see me looking over there. And I just have this sitting on that little stand. So anyway, if you're like me and you are interested in that kind of stuff, maybe stop by your local GameStop and see if you can get a copy, because it's just awesome to see. And it makes me want the physical. I know that everything you can get digitally now, but it makes me kind of miss the physical Game Informer magazine coming in every month. I've looked, and the last time I checked, that wasn't an option, but I'm hoping they'll bring it back. That would make me really happy. Anyway, getting to the manga now, I'm going to start with the negative, and then we'll end on a positive. So, Tokyo Ghoul. I had said, after the first volume, I was like, okay, it was really introductory. It was kind of... It felt both like it dragged and like not that much happened, and that's fine. It's the first volume. It's a little on the nose with, okay, so Ken gets... I'm not going to do that voice this whole time. If you don't know the synopsis, our main character is a human, and there are ghouls that exist in... It's our world, but it's a different version, basically, where there are ghouls that eat human flesh. Our main character ends up going on a date with what he thinks is a human. Turns out it's a ghoul. And then she tries to harm him, and there's an accident. She dies, he survives, but he needs a transplant. And they're like, well, this person just died, and they don't know that it's a ghoul. So they're like, let's just put their organ into him. And then now he has part ghoul in his body, and thus now is craving flesh. But he also isn't affected by certain things the way other ghouls are. He's sort of this hybrid. I like the premise. And I was really interested to see where we would go from there, even though I thought that first volume was a little slow and, like I said, introductory. And then in the second volume, we introduce this task force, basically, that is in charge of hunting down ghouls. And we are also simultaneously exploring the fact that not all ghouls are these crazy murderous beings that just want to eat people. Like our main character, there are those that have you could argue humanity in them, even when they aren't actually part human. And you see some of those characters, and you're also exploring some of that more in depth. I won't say too much, but it got really emotional. But you're also looking at the fact that the task force has very understandable reasons for thinking that the ghouls are awful and need to be taken out. Sorry if you heard my dog yawning. But anyway, I really liked that second volume. I thought it was fantastic, and I was like, okay, here we go. There's, I think, 14 volumes for this first part. Then I think there's a continuation later that has around that or a little more volumes. Third volume, I thought it dragged a lot as well, and we kind of lingered on a certain fight a little bit too much, but I was like, that's okay, I still am invested, I'm still really enjoying the depth that we're providing for some of the ghouls, the impact of this task force, and their actions on some of the ghouls, but then also I want to know more about the people in this task force. So it wasn't as good for me as Volume 2, but I still liked it. And what I was planning to do, because previously I had also been picking up Ancient Magus' Bride, is I figured I'm just going to read the rest of Tokyo Ghoul and then I'll jump back to Ancient Magus' Bride. I went from that mindset of I'm just going to read the rest to I don't want to read anymore, because I really, I don't know if I should say I hated Volume 4, because that's really extreme. But I was like, what are we doing? The plot went so many directions in this one volume. And we're kind of, basically the idea of the things that happened in the first volume were like, but was it all meant to be actually? Or was it pure chance? And I'm like, I don't, that annoyed me a little bit. Really, truly though, the plot, it feels like we took a break from the task force individuals and we took a break from all the meaningful stuff. There was one part where this one girl who I've nicknamed Edgy Girl, Edgy Girl's friend shows up and she's really sweet. And I'm like, okay, best part of the volume. But otherwise, we introduced this eccentric fella and I was like, why are we doing this? And then there's this big moment that's really morbid and dark and has to do with almost like cannibalism. And our main character is in danger. He's hardly reacting. He's such a not compelling main character. When you have characters like Edward from Full Metal Alchemist, or you have the bizarreness that is Girl from the Other Side, and that character that just loves so strongly this little girl and wants to protect her and is like a parental figure to her. When you have those kinds of characters, when you have the really deep character studies that you get in Vagabond, this character just doesn't stand up there for me next to those others, which is fine if the plot was really strong or if the world was really cool or things like that. And I was in when it felt like, okay, well, side characters get depth, or maybe we're going to explore this character more later, which maybe we do. I don't know. These first 4 volumes, though, the main character's whole thing is basically like, I'm just an average guy. Like, I feel like that's his personality, is that he's just a person. I need a little more from him, and I needed a little more reaction when all these bizarre things started to transpire. I feel like he just sort of was like, whoa, I'm gonna dodge, and I'm just, what? Why do you have no reaction to what's happening? Anyway, I also thought the plot was goofy, and it just feels edgy for the sake of edgy. I could be more forgiving of this one volume if I knew that there's, 20-something volumes in this series, or it's a long series, and so maybe you have the occasional volume that's not as strong. But given that there aren't that many volumes in this first part, like I said, I know there's a break, and then there's sort of a continuation, but there's not that many volumes. So I'm like, we don't have time. We don't have time to dilly-dally. Anyway, so realistically, I feel like there have been things that have kept me on the fence for a while. Volume 2 was so strong that I was like, okay, well, I'm on that. I'm over the fence now. And then Volume 3, I was like inching toward the fence. And then Volume 4, I just like knocked it down and I'm like, nope, and I left. I'm really sorry if you love Tokyo Ghoul. And if you're like, no, I swear, it's known among the fandom that Volume 4 is not good, or that a lot of us don't really like it, but it gets so good. If you really want to push and fight for Tokyo Ghoul, let me know, and I'll take that into consideration. But if you are like, realistically, I don't know if your mind is going to change much, you can let me know that too. But again, if you really love this series, I'm really sorry that that volume was such a miss for me. Anyway, I said I wanted to end on a positive, so let's get to that. Spy Family, Volume 11. So, the first chunk of this was hilarious. as it always is, Spy Family is always really funny. The second part, I don't know if it's the second half, but the second part after all the funny stuff was so sad. I almost started, even thinking about it, I'm getting emotional. I almost started crying when I got to one specific panel, and the quote from that panel, I almost burst into tears. I was like, what? Man, thinking about it now, I'm still having a hard time. If you've read it, you know, and if you haven't checked out Spy Family at all, you gotta give it a try. It's amazing. I'll have my Spy Family playlist linked if you're interested, but if you haven't yet read this volume, I think this might be my favorite volume. I thought that of volume 10 because you get some backstory for one of the characters and it's done phenomenally. But this one, interestingly, it's not one of your main characters. It's just a random person who you get some hints of things in their life, I'll say. And that was devastating. So the fact that I could care so much, it wasn't even this whole volume dedicated to that person. It was only part of the volume. The fact that I was able to care that much for a person that was introduced so briefly was masterful. But then on top of that, the reaction of the kids, because we have Anya, of course, and then all these kids that she goes to school with, their reactions to the events that are transpiring was also really emotional, because when you think about kids being in similar situations, which you know exists, it was actually really heartbreaking. I'm getting sad thinking about it. So anyway, volume 11 I think might be the best volume so far. And we have these two goofballs on the front, but that's fine. Anyway, this was great. It was great. I love this series so much. My husband and I are like, is it like one of our... Well, it's definitely one of our favorites of all time, but if you asked us to choose how it compares to some of our favorites, I think we'd have a hard time. It's just so different from anything else I think that's out there, and it's so great. I can't recommend Spy Family enough if you haven't checked it out. And if you've only checked out a little bit and you're like, oh, do I want to read more? Yes. Volumes 10 and 11. Yes. Anyway, that's it for this manga and video games vlog. Let me know what you've been checking out. Let me know your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth if you've been playing it, the mini games and all of that stuff, and then manga thoughts. Whatever you'd like to share, feel free. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.